Number you feared us. While we held back now, humanity shows its full Deathworlder fury. Admiral Zektar's crystalline fingers trembled as he reviewed the intelligence reports streaming across his command console. The bridge of the hegemony flagship Times, Eternal Dominance Times, buzzed with nervous energy from his crew. Their various alien forms hunched over stations that had once seemed invincible. Now, those same stations felt like fragile shells protecting them from the nightmare that humanity had become. Sir, his tactical officer, a six-armed Vorthak, spoke with barely controlled fear. The human fleet has entered the Kepler system. They're moving at impossible speeds. Zektar's species had evolved from creatures that lived in the peaceful depths of gas giant atmospheres, never knowing predation or violence until they reached the stars. Like most of the Galactic Hegemony's member races, they had assumed that intelligence naturally led to peaceful cooperation. They had been so terribly wrong about the humans. The view screen flickered to life, showing long-range sensors tracking the human armada. Where once humanity had fielded careful, defensive formations with their primitive chemical rockets and basic energy weapons, now something entirely different approached. Ships that moved like living things, twisting through space in ways that should have torn them apart. Weapons that seemed to bend reality itself. How many years has it been since first contact? Zektar asked his aide, though he already knew the answer. 47 standard cycles, Admiral. The Terran Diplomatic Corps has been compliant with all hegemony regulations during that time. Compliant. The word tasted bitter in Zektar's mind. The humans had been so eager to join galactic civilization, so willing to accept their place as a junior species. They had agreed to technology restrictions, accepted unfavorable trade agreements, and even allowed hegemony oversight of their military development. The galaxy's elder races had been pleased with humanity's submission, seeing them as another primitive species that would eventually learn their proper place. But there had been signs. Reports from human colonies that had been dismissed as exaggerations. Stories of humans surviving in conditions that would kill most species, of their strange ability to adapt and overcome seemingly impossible challenges. The galaxy had called their world a death world as a joke, never truly understanding what that meant. Admiral, the communications officer's voice cracked. Incoming transmission from the human fleet. It's Ambassador Chen. The elderly human diplomat appeared on screen, but something was different. Gone was the careful politeness, the measured words that had characterized decades of human interaction with the hegemony. Chen's eyes held a cold fury that made Zektar's atmospheric breathing apparatus stutter. Admiral Zektar, Chen began, his voice carrying none of its usual diplomatic warmth. I wanted to personally inform you that the Treaty of Terran Compliance is hereby terminated. Your attack on our colony world of New Eden was illuminating. Zektar's confidence wavered. New Eden had been a minor operation, a simple show of force to remind humanity of their place after they had dared to question hegemony trade restrictions. The orbital bombardment had been surgical, precise, minimal casualties, just enough to make a point. Ambassador, surely we can discuss. Discuss? Chen's laugh was sharp and bitter. You killed 2 million civilians, Admiral. Men, women, and children who were growing food to feed other colonies. You turned fertile farmland into radioactive glass. And you did it because we asked for fair treatment. The human's image leaned forward, and Zektar could see something in those alien eyes that chilled his atmospheric fluid. It was the look of a predator that had finally decided to stop pretending to be prey. For 47 years, we played by your rules, Chen continued. We accepted your restrictions on our technology. We allowed your inspectors to monitor our research. We traded our resources for your scraps and said thank you. Do you know why we did this, Admiral? Zektar found himself unable to speak. Around the bridge, his crew had gone silent. All attention focused on the human on their screen. We did it because we hoped we were wrong about you. We hoped that intelligence really did lead to wisdom. that advanced civilizations could coexist peacefully. We held back our true nature because we wanted to be better than what we were born to be. Chen's expression hardened further. But you've shown us that the galaxy respects only strength. You've shown us that mercy is seen as weakness, that restraint is seen as submission. So we're going to show you what a Deathworlder species really looks like when it stops holding back. The transmission cut out, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Zektar stared at the blank screen, his mind racing to process what he had just heard. In all his years of dealing with humans, he had never seen one display such raw, controlled anger. "Sir." The tactical officer's voice was barely a whisper. "Long-range sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from the human fleet. Their ships are changing." On the tactical display, the human vessels were indeed transforming. What had appeared to be standard starships were revealing their true nature. Hull sections slid apart to expose weapon systems that violated several known laws of physics. Ships that had registered as small frigates suddenly showed mass readings of dreadnought-class vessels. "How is that possible?" Zektar demanded. His science officer, a normally calm ethereal, spoke with trembling mental projections. "Admiral, I believe we have severely underestimated human technology. These readings suggest they have developed gravity manipulation, quantum field generators, and something else. Something our sensors cannot properly identify." The implications hit Zektar like a solar flare. For 47 years, humanity had been operating under technological restrictions imposed by the hegemony. They had submitted their research for approval, allowed limitations on their military development, accepted primitive technology, while the galaxy's elder races maintained their advantages. But what if they had never stopped their real research? What if everything they had shown, the galaxy was merely a facade, a carefully maintained illusion, while their true capabilities developed in secret? Communications. Zektar's voice was hoarse with growing panic. "Contact High Command. Emergency priority. Tell them we may have made a grave error regarding human capabilities." Zektar's voice, before his communications officer could respond, alarms began screaming throughout the ship. The tactical display lit up with impossible readings as space itself seemed to twist around the approaching human fleet. "Admiral!" The tactical officer's voice rose to a near shriek. "They're here! Root!" But that was impossible. The human fleet had been in the outer system moments ago, days away even at maximum conventional drive. Yet there they were, materializing from some form of faster-than-light technology that the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had declared impossible. The human ships hung in space like dark angels of destruction. They had shed all pretense of following galactic design conventions. These vessels looked organic, predatory, like the space-faring offspring of some cosmic apex predator. Smooth black hulls that seemed to absorb light itself, weapons that appeared to be grown rather than built, and an aura of barely contained violence that made every instinct Zektar possessed scream danger. "Incoming transmission," his communications officer announced, voice shaking. This time, it was not Ambassador Chen. The human who appeared on screen was younger, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform, unlike anything in hegemony records. The insignia was unfamiliar, but the confidence in the human's bearing spoke of someone accustomed to absolute authority. "I am Admiral Sarah Martinez of the Terran Defense Fleet," the human said, her voice carrying an edge that could cut through starship armor. "You are ordered to surrender your vessels and prepare to be boarded. You will face trial for war crimes against humanity." Zektar's diplomatic training kicked in, even through his growing terror. "Admiral Martinez, surely there is room for negotiation. The hegemony has maintained peace in this galaxy for... Your peace is built on the subjugation of younger species." Martinez cut him off. "Your order is maintained through fear and overwhelming force against those who cannot defend themselves. Today, that ends." Around Zektar's flagship, the massive hegemony fleet began to respond. Thousands of ships, the largest armada ever assembled, powered weapons that could crack planets and shielding that had never been breached. The combined might of dozens of advanced civilizations, technology refined over millions of years of galactic dominance. Admiral Martinez smiled, and Zektar realized with dawning horror that it was not the expression of someone facing impossible odds. It was the smile of an apex predator finally allowed to hunt. "You want to see what humanity is really capable of?" Martinez asked. "Let us show you what 47 years of holding back our true nature has created." The human ships moved, and Zektar's understanding of warfare died forever. They did not attack with conventional weapons or follow predictable tactical patterns. Instead, they moved like living things, like pack hunters that had been studying their prey for decades and finally decided to strike. Space around the hegemony fleet began to behave strangely. Gravity wells appeared and disappeared, creating crushing forces that no shielding could resist. Energy weapons fired that seemed to ignore the normal laws of physics, striking through dimensional barriers that should not have existed. But it was not just the technology that terrified Zektar. It was the way the humans used it. There was no hesitation, no mercy, no attempt to minimize casualties. These were not the careful, restrained humans who had accepted subjugation for nearly 5 decades. These were apex predators from a death world, and they were absolutely furious. As his flagship's shields began to fail under assault from weapons that should not have existed, Zektar realized the terrible truth. Humanity had never been weak. They had never been primitive. They had been learning, adapting, and preparing while hiding their true capabilities behind a mask of compliance. The galaxy had feared them while they held back. Now, they were about to discover what humanity looked like when the restraints came off. The last thing Zektar saw before his ship's hull breached was Admiral Martinez's face on the view screen, cold and implacable as the void itself. In her eyes, he saw the reflection of a galaxy that had pushed the wrong species too far. Humanity had tried to be civilized. Now they would simply be themselves. Number, you feared us. While we held back, now humanity shows its full Deathworlder fury. Senator Kyloth of the Zephyrian Council clutched his ornate staff with 4 trembling hands as he watched the emergency session of the Galactic Senate descend into chaos. Representatives from hundreds of species filled the vast amphitheater, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of panic, anger, and disbelief. The holographic displays surrounding the chamber showed the same horrifying images on repeat: the complete destruction of Admiral Zektar's fleet, the orbital stations around Hegemony Prime burning like dying stars, and human ships moving through space with a grace that defied everything the galaxy thought it knew about physics. Order! Order! The Hegemon Supreme pounded his crystalline gavel, the sound echoing through the chamber like breaking glass. His ancient form, nearly 3,000 years old and representing one of the galaxy's oldest civilizations, radiated the kind of authority that had kept peace for millennia. But today, even his commanding presence could barely contain the panic. Representative Tix of the Trader Consortium raised her multiple vocal appendages, her merchant species' natural diplomacy strained to breaking. Honored Hegemon, we must discuss immediate economic sanctions against the human territories. Their actions constitute a complete violation of ENICO sanctions. The interruption came from a being near the back of the chamber, its voice cutting through the noise like a vibroblade. The speaker was Ambassador Korath of the Thanari Empire, a species known for their military traditions and warrior culture. His scarred exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber lights as he stood to his full, imposing height. "Did any of you actually watch the tactical recordings?" Korath's voice carried a mixture of grudging respect and barely contained terror. "I have commanded fleets in 17 major conflicts. I have seen weapons that can shatter moons and defenses that can withstand the fury of dying stars. What the humans deployed in the Kepler system makes all of that look like children playing with toys." The chamber fell silent. When a Thanari warrior spoke of being outmatched in combat, the galaxy listened. Korath activated his personal holographic display, showing detailed analysis of the battle. Look at this ship-to-ship combat footage. Watch how their vessels move. They are not following ballistic physics as we understand them. Their ships twist through space-time itself, arriving where they want to be rather than traveling through the space between. The images showed human ships phasing in and out of normal space, appearing behind hegemony vessels and delivering devastating attacks before vanishing again. It was like watching ghosts fight, except these ghosts carried weapons that could annihilate matter at the quantum level. Furthermore, Korath continued, his voice growing quieter and somehow more frightening, observe their weapon systems. These are not energy beams or projectile weapons. They appear to be manipulating fundamental forces. Here, watch this clip. The hologram showed a human cruiser facing a hegemony dreadnought that outmassed it by a factor of 50. The human ship simply pointed what looked like an empty section of hull at its opponent. Space around the dreadnought began to fold. The massive vessel compressed into an impossibly small point of light, and then simply ceased to exist. That ship contained 12,000 crew members, Korath said into the stunned silence. It was protected by shields that could withstand direct stellar bombardment. The humans made it disappear by thinking about it wrong. Senator Kyloth felt his species' breathing apparatus seize with terror. The Zephyrians had evolved on a world where the greatest dangers were storms and natural disasters. Violence between intelligent beings was nearly incomprehensible to them, which was why they had made such excellent mediators for the hegemony. But this was beyond violence. This was cosmic horror made manifest. Honored representatives, a new voice spoke from the diplomatic section. Dr. Elena Vasquez, humanity's chief science liaison, rose from her seat with the fluid grace that all humans seem to possess. Even now, facing the combined outrage of the galaxy's leadership, she appeared calm and composed. The chamber erupted in angry noise as representatives demanded to know how humanity dared to show their face here after their unprovoked aggression. Dr. Vasquez waited patiently for the noise to die down, her dark eyes scanning the assembled delegates with an expression that reminded Kyloth uncomfortably of a predator evaluating potential threats. You wish to know how we developed these capabilities, Dr. Vasquez said when she could be heard. Her voice carried easily through the chamber despite speaking at normal volume, a trick of acoustics that the galaxy's architects had never managed to achieve. The answer is simple. You taught us to. The Hegemon Supreme leaned forward on his ancient throne. Explain yourself, human. Dr. Vasquez activated her own holographic display, showing 47 years of human interaction with galactic civilization. When we first encountered the hegemony, we were indeed a primitive species by your standards. Chemical rockets, nuclear fission, basic electromagnetic communications. You offered us membership in galactic society in exchange for accepting certain limitations. The hologram showed the signing of the Treaty of Terran Compliance, the document that had governed human development for nearly 5 decades. Kyloth remembered the ceremony well. Humanity had been so eager to join, so willing to accept their place as a junior partner. Those limitations included restrictions on our research into faster-than-light travel, quantum mechanics, gravitational manipulation, and what you termed dangerous artificial intelligence, Dr. Vasquez continued. You justified this by claiming that young species needed guidance to avoid destroying themselves with advanced technology. Her expression hardened slightly. What you never understood is that humans do not respond to prohibition the way your species do. When you tell a human they cannot do something, you do not eliminate their desire to do it. You simply force them to become creative about hiding their efforts. The implications hit Kyloth like a physical blow. You continued your research in secret? Dr. Vasquez smiled, and there was something deeply unsettling about the expression. Dr. Kyloth, in the 47 years since first contact, humanity has colonized 43 star systems, established orbital habitats for over 2 billion people, and maintained constant communication across hundreds of light-years of space. Did you really think we were doing this with the technology you allowed us to have? She gestured to her holographic display, which now showed the true scope of human expansion. Where the hegemony believed humanity controlled a handful of primitive colonies, the reality showed a vast network of hidden installations, research facilities, and military bases spread across dozens of star systems. Every world you knew about was a facade, Dr. Vasquez explained. Every research station we showed you was conducting exactly the kind of basic studies you expected to see. Meanwhile, our real work proceeded in locations you never suspected existed. The chamber erupted again, this time with demands for explanation. How had humanity hidden such massive operations? How had their sensor networks failed to detect human expansion on this scale? Dr. Vasquez waited for quiet, then continued. You failed to detect us for the same reason you failed to understand us. Your species evolved in environments where deception was unnecessary. Your civilizations developed along paths where cooperation was the optimal survival strategy. You assumed that all intelligent life would follow the same pattern. Her smile grew sharper. Humans evolved on a world where everything was trying to kill us. Our earliest survival strategies involved deception, camouflage, and misdirection. We learned to hide from predators that were faster and stronger, to coordinate hunting strategies for prey that was more dangerous than ourselves, and to compete with other human groups for limited resources. She paused, letting the implications sink in. We did not see your restrictions as protection. We saw them as chains, and we spent 47 years learning everything we could about our captors, while they remained ignorant of our true capabilities. Korath's voice cut through the stunned silence. The New Eden bombardment was not random, was it? You were waiting for us to provide justification. Dr. Vasquez's expression became glacial. 2 million civilians, Ambassador Korath. Men, women, and children, who were growing food for our expanding colonies. You killed them because we asked for fair treatment in trade negotiations. Yes, we were prepared for hegemony aggression. We had been preparing for it since the day we signed your treaty. The Hegemon Supreme's ancient voice carried a note of growing comprehension and fear. The technology demonstration, in the Kepler system, that was not your full capability. No, Dr. Vasquez confirmed. That was a single fleet using outdated equipment. Our current generation of ships makes those vessels look primitive. She manipulated her holographic display, showing real-time images of human shipyards around distant stars, vast construction facilities built into asteroids and planetoids, turning out vessels that seemed to be grown rather than built. The ships themselves defied conventional design, looking more like predatory organisms than mechanical constructs. We call them Apex-class vessels, Dr. Vasquez explained. Each one is built around a singularity core that allows manipulation of space-time on a massive scale. Their weapon systems utilize controlled quantum collapse, dimensional shearing, and temporal displacement. Their defensive systems exist partially outside normal space-time. 2000. The silence in the chamber was absolute. Kyloth tried to process what he was hearing, but his mind kept rejecting the information as impossible. The technology Dr. Vasquez was describing was beyond anything the galaxy's most advanced civilizations had achieved. How many of these ships do you possess? The Hegemon Supreme asked. Dr. Vasquez's smile was almost gentle now, like an adult explaining simple concepts to a child. Hegemon Supreme, that is not the right question. The right question is, how many do we need? She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed stellar cartography of the local galactic arm. Red markers appeared throughout the display, marking what Kyloth realized with growing horror were human military installations. For 47 years, you have controlled this galaxy through superior technology and overwhelming force, Dr. Vasquez said. You have maintained order by ensuring that no single species could challenge your combined might. It was an effective system, and it brought peace to trillions of beings. The red markers on the display began to pulse. And Kyloth realized they were not just showing locations. They were showing targeting solutions. But that system depended on one critical assumption, Dr. Vasquez continued. You assumed that you would always maintain technological superiority. You assumed that your restrictions would prevent younger species from developing dangerous capabilities. Most importantly, you assumed that no species would be cunning enough to hide their true development while pretending to submit to your authority. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of species. You were wrong on all counts. Humanity spent 47 years studying you, learning your weaknesses, and developing weapons specifically designed to counter your advantages. Every treaty you made us sign, every restriction you placed on us, every condescending lecture about the wisdom of older civilizations. We remembered all of it. The Hegemon Supreme's voice was barely a whisper. What do you want from us? Dr. Vasquez's expression softened slightly, showing what might have been genuine sadness. We want what we have always wanted, Hegemon Supreme. We want to be left alone to develop our civilization as we see fit. We want fair treatment in trade and diplomacy. We want the restrictions on human technology to be lifted. And we want recognition that humanity is no longer a junior partner in galactic affairs. She paused, and when she continued, her voice carried absolute certainty. You can provide these things willingly, or we can take them by force. The choice, as it has always been, is yours. The chamber remained silent for long moments as the galaxy's leadership grappled with the new reality. Finally, Representative Tix spoke, her merchant's instincts overcoming her fear. And if we refuse? Dr. Vasquez's holographic display changed one final time, showing Admiral Martinez's fleet as it moved through the outer system toward Hegemony Prime itself. The ships moved through space like a school of predatory fish, their formation speaking of coordination and purpose that was almost organic in nature. Then you will discover what happens when a Deathworlder species decides to stop pretending to be civilized. Doctor, Vasquez replied. And I promise you, honored representatives, that is not a discovery you want to make. As if to emphasize her point, long-range sensors began detecting massive gravitational anomalies throughout the system. Human reinforcements were arriving, and each new fleet was larger and more advanced than the last. The galaxy had spent 47 years believing they had tamed humanity. Now, they were about to learn the difference between submission and patience, between weakness and restraint. The age of hegemony dominance was ending. The age of humanity was about to begin. Number, you feared us, while we held back. Now humanity shows its full Deathworlder fury. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the observation deck of the Terran flagship Times, Inevitable Consequence, *, watching as the last hegemony defense platforms around their capital world powered down in surrender. The massive orbital installations that had protected the galactic seat of power for over 2,000 years now hung dead in space. Their weapon systems offline, and their crews evacuated. 3 months had passed since the emergency session of the Galactic Senate, and the galaxy had learned the true meaning of human patience and preparation. Elena's sister, Dr. Elena Vasquez, had given them every opportunity to negotiate. The hegemony leadership had chosen poorly. Captain, her tactical officer, Commander Zhang, approached with a data pad. Final casualty reports from the hegemony forces. Total military losses, approximately 40,000 ships and 8 million personnel, civilian casualties. He paused, checking the numbers again. Minimal. As ordered. Elena nodded, accepting the report. Even in war, humanity maintained certain principles. The civilians of hegemony worlds were not responsible for their leaders' decisions, but military forces that had enforced galactic oppression for millennia. They had learned the price of underestimating a Deathworld species. The bridge communicator chimed, and Admiral Martinez's image appeared on the main display. The Admiral looked tired but satisfied, her uniform bearing the new insignia of the Terran hegemony. Humanity had not destroyed the galactic government structure. merely replaced its leadership. Elena, status report on the integration process? Captain Vasquez consulted her command interface. Remarkably smooth, Admiral. Turns out, most of the galaxy's member species were not particularly attached to the old system. Once they realized we were not planning to become the new oppressors, cooperation improved dramatically. It was true. The greatest surprise of the human conquest had been how many species actively welcomed the change. The Zephyrians had become enthusiastic supporters once they understood that human leadership meant actual protection rather than subjugation. The Trader Consortium had quickly recognized the economic opportunities that came with genuine free trade, rather than hegemony-controlled resource extraction. Even the warrior species like the Thanari had adapted well. Ambassador Korath now served as liaison between human forces and traditional military organizations, helping to integrate centuries of combat experience with human innovation. What about the former leadership? Admiral Martinez asked. Elena's expression hardened slightly. The Hegemon Supreme and his inner council are being held on the prison world of Tartarus VII. They're alive, comfortable, but completely isolated from galactic affairs. War crimes, tribunals, will begin next month, and resistance movements? Scattered and largely ineffective, Elena replied. Most died out once it became clear that human rule was actually beneficial to member species. The few remaining holdouts are more annoying than dangerous. Admiral Martinez smiled grimly. Good. And our own development? This was the question Elena had been both dreading and anticipating. Admiral, I need to brief you on Project Genesis. We may have a problem. So, the Admiral's expression grew serious. Explain. R. K2R. In C. Elena manipulated her command interface, bringing up classified research data that made even human technological achievements look primitive. 3 weeks ago, our deep space exploration fleets encountered something in the galactic core region. Initial contact protocols suggest we may not be alone in terms of advanced Deathworld species. The holographic display showed long-range sensor data from the galactic center, detecting massive artificial structures and energy signatures that dwarfed even human capabilities. Whatever had built them was operating on a scale that suggested technological development thousands of years beyond current human achievements. We believe they call themselves the Void Syndicate, Elena continued. Our xenobiology teams think they may have originated from a world even more hostile than Earth. Their initial communications were concerning. Admiral Martinez leaned forward. Concerning how? They seem to view our expansion into their territory as amusing, Elena replied. Their first transmission was essentially a compliment on our cute conquest of the local galactic arm. They want to meet with human leadership to discuss what they called real civilization. The implications hung heavy in the air. Humanity had spent 47 years preparing to overthrow the hegemony, developing technology and strategy that had seemed overwhelmingly superior. Now they faced the possibility that their achievements were merely the accomplishments of a younger sibling species in a galaxy full of apex predators. Estimated time until contact? Admiral Martinez asked. Their ships are already en route, Elena replied. They appear to be using some form of instantaneous travel that makes our space-time manipulation look like chemical rockets. They should arrive within the week. Admiral Martinez was quiet for several long moments, processing the information. Finally, she spoke with the same calm certainty that had characterized human leadership throughout the conquest. Very well. Prepare our best diplomatic personnel and our most advanced ships. If these Void Syndicate beings want to evaluate our civilization, let's give them something worth evaluating. Elena smiled, recognizing the tone. It was the same voice humanity had used when facing down the hegemony, the same confidence that had carried them through 47 years of secret preparation and 3 months of galactic conquest. Admiral, there's something else. Our deep space sensors have detected at least 3 other major civilizations operating in nearby galactic arms. Each appears to be roughly equivalent to the Void Syndicate in terms of technological capabilities. It's possible that our local galactic arm was considered something like a nature preserve by the larger galactic community. Admiral Martinez's smile was sharp and predatory. A nature preserve that we just turned into a human empire. How very interesting. She paused, considering the implications. Elena, I want you to prepare a full briefing for the Terran Council. Include all data on these advanced civilizations, our current military capabilities, and recommendations for next steps. It appears our education is far from complete. The communication ended, leaving Elena alone with her thoughts on the observation deck. Below her, the former hegemony capital world continued its peaceful surrender. Human ships moved through the system like schools of predatory fish, maintaining order while the transition to new leadership continued. But beyond the edges of human space, vast civilizations operated with technologies and capabilities that made humanity's recent achievements look primitive. The galaxy was a much larger and more dangerous place than they had imagined. Elena accessed her personal communication system and opened a channel to Earth. Her message would take several days to reach humanity's birth world, but certain conversations could not be delayed. This is Captain Elena Vasquez reporting to the Terran Council. The conquest of the local galactic arm has been completed successfully. All former hegemony worlds have accepted human leadership or neutral status. Resistance has been minimal and is decreasing daily. She paused, choosing her words carefully. However, we have encountered evidence of significantly more advanced civilizations operating in the galactic core and neighboring arms. It appears that humanity's development, while impressive by local standards, may be considered primitive by truly advanced species. The thought did not discourage her. If anything, Elena felt the familiar thrill of challenge that had driven humanity to overcome every obstacle in their path. They had spent 47 years learning to hide their true capabilities from the hegemony. Now, they would learn to compete with species that viewed their recent achievements as cute. Recommendations: immediate expansion of research and development programs, acceleration of military shipbuilding, and preparation for diplomatic contact with civilizations that may view us as we viewed the hegemony member species. We should assume that everything we have accomplished so far has been observed and evaluated by beings who consider us potential prey. Elena smiled as she composed the final portion of her message. However, Council members should remember that humanity has never responded well to being underestimated. If these advanced civilizations wish to test our resolve, they will discover what the hegemony learned. We are not the same species we were 47 years ago, and we are certainly not the species we were when we first crawled out of Earth's gravity well. She paused the recording and looked out at the stars beyond the observation deck. Somewhere in those points of light, ancient civilizations pursued goals and ambitions that humanity could barely imagine. They had technologies that could reshape reality itself, weapons that could extinguish stars, and lifespans that measured in geological eras. But they had never been human. They had never been forged in the crucible of a world that was actively trying to kill them. They had never learned to survive by being smarter, more adaptable, and more vicious than everything else in their environment. Elena resumed her recording. The galaxy believes it understands what humanity represents. They see us as another violent species from a dangerous world, notable perhaps for our cunning and our technology, but ultimately predictable within known parameters. Her smile grew sharper. They are about to learn the same lesson the hegemony learned. Humanity does not fight to win. Humanity fights to survive. And we have never encountered a threat that we could not eventually overcome. She ended the recording and transmitted it toward Earth, then turned her attention back to the tactical displays showing human fleets spreading throughout their new territory. The ships moved with the same predatory grace that had characterized the conquest. But now, they carried a new purpose. They were no longer hiding. They were no longer holding back. They were no longer pretending to be something they were not. The galaxy's advanced civilizations wanted to meet the species that had conquered the local arm in 3 months? They would discover what 4.5 billion years of evolution on a death world had created when that creation stopped pretending to be civilized. Humanity had tried restraint. They had attempted diplomacy. They had offered cooperation and compromise. Now they would simply be themselves and let the galaxy learn to live with the consequences. The age of hiding was over. The age of human expansion had begun, and somewhere in the galactic core, ancient beings who had ruled unchanged for millions of years were about to encounter a species that had never learned to accept the concept of permanent defeat. They had feared humanity while humanity held back. Soon, they would understand why.